It is an absolute pleasure to have both of our guests with us this evening to talk about the wonderful film that we've all just watched, Free Money. I am going to hand over to Saraphina in a moment to introduce both of them. There are some pre-prepared questions to start the conversation, and then we will try and feed in other questions that you have put kindly in the chat for us. But without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Saraphina, a visionary leader and trailblazer in the field of community development and human rights. She is both founder of Eagle Wings organization and is the team lead for the new UBI Lab in Kenya. So Saraphina, over to you.
Thank you very much, Johnny, and thank you all for tuning in into this live streaming. So today we are having two very important guests, and I'd just like to give them each a minute to do a quick introduction of who they are. We are having Lauren DeFilippo, who is the director of Insignia Films. So Lauren, if you can just say hi and probably a little bit about you.
Sure. Hi. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Saraphina, and everyone for having us and screening our film Free Money. I made this film alongside co-director Sam Soko, who is not able to be with us tonight. Soko just recently had a baby, so he is tied up at the moment, but he sends his warmest wishes. And yeah, this was a project we worked together on for about 5 years, and it was a really interesting collaboration, I think, between kind of American and Kenyan filmmakers, and we hope that that collaboration is apparent in the film and something that I would love to talk more about with you all today.
All right, thank you, Lauren. And we also have Caroline Teti from GiveDirectly. Caroline, please say hi.
Oh, you're on mute, Teti.
You're on mute, Caroline.
Sorry about that. Thank you. To everyone, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Caroline Teti here, coming to you from Nairobi. I work at GiveDirectly as Director, Advocacy and Recipients Safeguarding. As you may have seen already, I participated very actively in this film as Lauren and Soko are working on producing it. And it's a pleasure to be here with you today to talk about what you have observed and to respond to your questions.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Before we dive into the questions, I can see we are having a lot of questions in our Q&A. I'd just like to say congratulations for the film and also for the project. I can see it was impactful. And before I get to the questions here, Caroline, when you look at the term free money, it really dives into the heart of a big idea of, universal basic income. So can you maybe share what sparked your interest in the concept and why you did choose the village of Kogutu in Kenya? You know, Kenya has a lot of different villages and communities, but she decided to go for Kogutu to explore how these plays out in real lives.
Thank you, Saraphina. Talking about universal basic income, one clarification that I want to make here is universal basic income did not start with the projects at GiveDirectly, neither did it start with the recent development work that we hear across the globe. Basic income is something that started way back in the 17th century with Martin Luther King Jr., but it's been as controversial as you may imagine. People still asking today why you would just give people money. Even at that time, those were the same questions that were being asked. But as you can see and as you can hear from across the globe, there is increasing traction with many countries implementing universal basic income, but they're implemented in ways that is not the same as what we are doing here. This is the longest universal basic income ever that we have globally. And basically the reason that this is of interest to us is we wanted to get to know and join the global discourse around giving money over a long period of time. And while we have seen universal basic income projects running for 3-5 years or thereabout, we've never had a long basic income that runs for this long. And we wanted to just test if money were to be given to people living in vulnerability and poverty, and you gave it for a long time, what would that mean? 12 years, for example, in Kenya is a period enough for a child to start schooling from grade 1 to end of high school, which basically makes a really big decision in the life of a child. Why did we choose Kogutu? By any average standard, Kogutu looks like a lot of rural villages that we have in Kenya. And as you may have seen at the beginning of the film, Kogutu is one of the many villages that are participating in this project. And lots of those villages, the life of the people there look very, very similar to Kogutu. They live in poverty of 50% and above, which means half of the people living in that community or more are living in what would be called extreme poverty, which is today less than $2.15 a day by the estimation of the World Bank. Back to you, Saraphina.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Lauren, as we've been watching the film, of course, we've seen that each and every member of Kogutu was receiving $22 each month as part of this program. So during the whole process, could you maybe give some personal stories that really stood out, showing how this money really affected the villagers' lives in a positive or maybe even unexpected ways?
Sure. Yeah, I think very aligned too with what Teti is saying. What was really interesting was to see so many kids have the ability to go to school more comfortably and securely than they could before. And so it does seem as though with the length of the study being 12 years, we're really going to see a generation of kids that will have been able to, kind of have secured education that they may not have had access to before the money. So that was certainly a standout for me. I would say the other biggest anecdotal difference, I didn't witness this myself, but during COVID, Soko was able to kind of finally make his way to the village once, we could navigate through the shutdowns and what have you. And when he got there, he was very surprised, I think, at the difference that people are experiencing because of the security of the basic income that other people around them simply didn't have. It seems like people were still kind of able to buy farm equipment. One of our characters had bought a cow. It seemed as though, they were able to kind of navigate and have some security that just wasn't possible when everybody else was so on edge during such an unprecedented experience as COVID. So I think in particular, like those were some standout moments where we really saw the benefits of just providing a floor for people.
Well, thank you very much. And yeah, I think we heard of the different examples the beneficiaries were giving, like, getting a cow and getting some new fashions and etc. I'm sure that really stood out for you during the whole process. Let me just go to the Q&A. Danielle is asking, might this whole program cause inflation?
Yeah, I would let Teti speak more directly to that. That is one of the facets that GiveDirectly is trying to study. So I think that it's still ongoing, but Teti, you should take it.
Thank you, Lauren. So that's a really good question, Saraphina. And when you think about delivery of cash transfers, I'm sure not just Danielle, many more people are asking this question. And even as GiveDirectly, we also ask this question because we know if this is going to be an area we want to demonstrate technical expertise, we'd want to ask as many questions as possible to help the world understand the safety, the viability, and the operational feasibility of implementing direct cash unconditionally in communities such as Kogutu. And aside of the universal basic income, we have a separate study which we are calling general equilibrium, which was giving a larger value transfer of $1,000 per household. If you wanted to think about this compared to the universal basic income, that would be a lot of money that would worry you as a cause of inflation. But when we studied that project and asked the same questions about the financial impact or the economic impact of the program on the communities, particularly asking about inflation, we actually did not see any inflation. In fact, what we saw is that the people who benefited from these transfers were not only the recipients of the program. Actually, non-recipients benefited more, and the data that we have out of that study shows that 2.5 times in terms of increase per dollar was realized in those communities among non-recipients. So in terms of inflation, the community has its ways of absorbing these resources, redistributing it, and the study did not find any evidence of inflationary effects on the community or neighboring communities.
Thank you, Caroline. Lauren, do you have anything else to add? I think you wanted to say something.
No, that was it. I think it's you know, we weren't able to go touch on that directly in the film. It seemed as though it was something that was still playing out. And I know, as Caroline said, is something that is still continuing to be studied as the larger 12-year trial.
All right, thank you. I'm sure each and everyone is so much interested to know how GiveDirectly decided to choose the beneficiaries, or rather the recipients of the cash for this program. Caroline, do you want to take that out?
Definitely. So as you may see already, this project was selecting participation at the village level, which means a village was included in the project. And once you are in, once your village was included in the project, everyone who was 18 years and above was included to participate in the program. For those villages that are receiving transfers for 12 years, we also enrolled young people 15 to 17 years who were living in the villages at the time when we were running enrollment. And today, as we speak, we are 1 year into sending their transfers since they turned 18. We facilitated them to enroll, to get, national IDs, get mobile phones, and register in the mobile money account. And once they have the mobile money wallets, they started receiving their transfers. So basically, in terms of who is eligible for this program, anybody in a village that was included in the project who was 18 years and above at the time when we were doing the enrollment is eligible.
So for example, if a family had probably maybe more than 7 people who are 18 and above, all the 7 people were eligible to get the cash transfer.
Absolutely. As you can see in the household of Cyprus, we had Cyprus and her granddaughter. And in the household of Jake, is it Jake or Jacob? The guy who had the motorcycle, we have a total of 5 people in his family receiving the transfer, himself, his wife, and 3 of his children.
So was something else to follow up is, was the cash transfer done using maybe a randomized method within the village, or after giving out the details you had to receive the cash? And what are these details that the villagers were giving for them to be able to access these funds?
So basically, if you wanted to think about it in terms of a randomized control trial, randomization was done at village level. So basically, like I have said, reiterating here, that a village was either included or not included in the program. But once a village is included, everybody 18 years and above who lived in the village at the time of enrollment was eligible for the transfers. The data that we were getting from the recipient was data that was supposed to be facilitating the transfer of the money and the follow-up, as you have seen, our staff calling them back to find out how they are doing, which is the reason that we would collect the data. Basically, it means we'd need to know your name, we'd need to know your phone number, and related details that would help in facilitating the transfer and also the follow-up communication with the recipients in their communities.
All right, thank you. Lauren, I'd like to maybe get your view when it comes to now the moments that really highlighted change throughout the whole process. This has been in trial for the last 12 years. Is that right, Caroline?
This project was launched in January 2018. It's going to run for 12 years, so we expect it to run until 2029.
Okay, so we are in the third year, almost fourth, fifth year. So yeah, in the fifth year. So Lauren, while doing this, probably from the first to now the fifth year, maybe you can share the moments that you have really highlighted change within the village.
Yeah, I would say certainly when they first started receiving the transfers, there was a big change. I think just the whole kind of attitude of the village was altered. And I think that there was a lot of astonishment that it came through, and they were so happy, and they could kind of start planning in this more long-term way that had not been possible. So that was all really wonderful to see, and I think has progressed in a great way. I feel as though, you know, of course, we were particularly interested in the story of Jael, the girl who didn't receive the money, and we're sort of on the roller coaster with her through the ups and downs of being in contact with GiveDirectly and kind of thinking it was coming and it wasn't, and sort of the back and forth there. And so that became, you know, a real like touchstone for us in terms of the process of kind of where was Jael. And I think, you know, for better or for worse, I mean, unfortunately, she did not meet the qualifications in the end. She did not receive the money. But I think in terms of a project, what was interesting was to see kind of her opportunities against somebody like Emma. So the girl she's very close to in the film. And Emma, you know, is able to go to school, and she is kind of able to do so much because of the basic income that she receives. And so that was a very positive change in Emma's life. And we could kind of look at the two almost as, you know, this one example of what a basic income can allow a young woman like that to do, and the opportunities that can kind of open up for her. So and then, you know, we're screening the film in Kogutu very soon for the village. They have not seen it yet. And so we're, you know, just kind of continuing to certainly be in touch with everyone there. And this is such an open-ended kind of thing. Like, it really is. I want the sequel personally of, you know, what really will happen with the full length of the trial. And I think that we will definitely keep watch on that and, you know, try and make a follow-up if we can. But there's still so much, I think, to be done, and really interesting that people can plan in such a long-term way over a 12-year period like this.
All right. And maybe just to add on the same, how would you say that these also reflected on their needs and maybe aspirations as beneficiaries of the program?
Well, I think what's so amazing about basic income is that people can decide what they want to do with the money, right? Like, I think it can really answer anybody's various dreams or aspirations, and there's no real judgment on what they're doing with the money. There's no requirements. And so, you know, you definitely see the kids that go to school. Our other character, John, he's able to go to Nairobi and kind of have this huge life change and migrate to a different part of the country, right, and still be able to receive this money, which I think is so key. And so I just think that it's I guess just what is so interesting about it as a form of an intervention is that people can decide what they want to do with it, and it gives people that agency. And I just think that, you know, you can't take that away from the idea of basic income and really what it's about at its core.
A follow-up on the same, as you're doing also this study now, what are we comparing on, or rather, what are these outcomes that we are waiting to see, the findings from these film or research?
I will take that, Saraphina.
Okay.
So basically, as has been indicated in the film, this project is a randomized control trial, which means we are trying to study a number of things. And most of the things that we are studying, some we have already started seeing, either anecdotally or through, the initial results that came right when COVID struck. Some of the things we are asking ourselves is how a basic income influences planning and spending decisions of the recipients. We are also looking at how the transfers influence saving and saving behavior. We are asking ourselves what happens in terms of migration and whether people move out of villages to go elsewhere to look for opportunities, and how that's affecting what proportion of the population would be affected by that type of behavior. We are looking at gender relations at the household level. How does it affect relationship between partners within families, in terms of receiving this money, whether the relationships improve or they don't. As you would imagine, as we continue to deliver these transfers, there are things that will be emerging that we may not have anticipated, and those we will also be tracking as part of our unintended effects of the study, whether those are positive or negative, and we hope that we can be able to report them among all the other things that we are going to be reporting. Also, just wanted to let us know that after the COVID study, there has been, there's soon going to be a second release of the study, which is already showing positive impacts, especially for the long-term arms of the study. And once that is done, we will be happy to also share the results with the public, so people can know how the study is progressing and the impact in the communities that are receiving the transfers.
All right. Thank you, Caroline. We are also having Chiwe, and I would like her to maybe to support in responding in this. How widespread is UBI today? Have any maybe whole countries introduced it? Chiwe, please go ahead.
Hi, Saraphina. I was hoping I wasn't speaking today. Hi, everybody. So we were aware of pilots that have taken place in places like Alaska, places like India, and obviously some experiments in Kenya, as well as in Wales here in the United Kingdom. So there are quite a lot of pilots around, but there's no country that has exclusively yet that I'm aware of introduced it in its entirety as universal basic income.
I think we have South Korea that has done a large section of the country delivering universal basic income. I think a whole county where they tried what they also call a pilot. And I think so far that should be the largest in terms of population of a basic income in a country.
Okay, thank you.
I was just going to add, sorry, and Teti, you can speak to this better, but also the state of Alaska, right? Do they have a pretty widespread program? Yeah. They don't call it a basic income, but it's basically like a grant that everyone receives because of the oil wealth, I guess of the country. And so, so it is just a really interesting example of it's totally viable, and it can work as kind of an addition to a very functioning capitalistic society. So there are kind of these small little microcosms where you do see it taking place.
Yeah, absolutely, Lauren, that's right. And we see traction, projects that are keen to basic income gaining traction in the US. And in the US, you'd hear them being called more guaranteed income. And now we have like commitments from county governments, committing resources to go into sending money directly to people living in specific situations, mostly poverty. And the guaranteed income, so far we have seen it in Cook County, in Chicago, in Georgia, and we continue seeing it in other countries. We know that Finland tried a pilot some time back, and we also have Namibia is one of the countries where basic income has been tried, and we know that there are lots and lots of campaigns along universal basic income globally, where people are pushing for basic income for different reasons, whether it is around the welfare state or it's about automation and the future of work. Like there's a lot of bits and pieces of similar projects going on in different parts of the world.
Yeah, that is true. We have several countries that are trying out UBI. Probably the population is what is the difference, but I'm sure we have different and more countries trying this out. Paul would like to know how much has GiveDirectly managed to leverage from development organizations, for example, the World Bank, especially for this program.
So speaking specifically for the Universal Basic Income, this is a project that we fundraised for upfront, and the resources that we got there came from different sources. I would say at that time, we didn't have any resourcing coming from institutions like the World Bank, but we continue to increase our partnership with institutions like the World Bank and other development partners in different parts of the world to raise resources to reach more people living in extreme poverty. And today, not just universal basic income, but we've been able to reach over 1.5 million people because of the lessons that we've learned across different countries, currently 14, and continuing to learn. And we are seeing really good progress, both in terms of the traction of direct transfers going to people's pocket to change people's lives, and you know, the conviction that is getting into the hearts of donors and individuals who are continuing to believe in the impact of cash when it is given to people directly. Actually, one of the things that we have seen is and which we are also seeing with the basic income is, if you are intending to give people money to help change their lives and you have a value that you want to give them, it looks like if you give people money upfront, so for example, if you have $1,000 to give someone, it's better to give it in lump sum rather than giving it in small bits. And this is something that we are also seeing in the basic income project. As you can see, this community, as we send them the the $22, they are coming together to coalesce and join together so that they can have larger transfer values because of the amount of, or rather the value of investment that they get when they pull the money together and get bigger values. So lots of lessons to learn out of all the studies that we have done.
And from this program, I know you've been giving money, and the villagers are the ones to decide what they want to do with the money. But are you also considering to support other things like maybe infrastructure, communities, education, for the infrastructures like healthcare systems, hospitals and schools, and etc.?
As you heard in the film, Saraphina, that's a really good question that you're asking. However, the things that you're talking about are things that fall within public policy. And what we are saying is today we are talking about 650 million people living in extreme poverty. And we can see that people are going without food, children are not able to go to school, and responsibilities that households have that are a burden to them, which, as you may imagine, governments will not always be able to meet those needs, as government try to focus on building schools, building hospitals, building roads. And the message that we're passing here is that the responsibility of the government to its citizens still remains of paramount importance. Governments still need to invest in healthcare. They still need to invest in education, infrastructure, roads, hospitals, lighting, water and sanitation. Like, people should have a decent environment to live in. However, as we wait for those people, for the support that is coming from the government, we shouldn't be sitting easy and see people or children going without food, or families unable to send their children to school when it takes so little to be able to turn that around. So this is the message that we're saying, that, you know what, let's not watch people suffer. Poverty is dehumanizing. Poverty is devastating. And we know that there is global wealth that can be able to turn poverty around. And it is really, really important that we came back to humanity and gave back humanity the dignity that they deserve, which is, don't let people sleep hungry, because it's not fair.
All right, thank you. Lauren, during the whole filming process, maybe you can share what you observed within the village when it comes to relative inequality. How are social relationships impacted, and the community cohesion and etc.?
Well, I feel like what I can speak to most was just as you see in the film, the tensions that arise from the people that aren't receiving the money, right, from the neighboring villages, and that is just the nature of the game in many ways. But you know, we as the filmmakers were just interested in that because this was such a close-knit community, and you know, essentially their neighbors are just across the path. You know, it's all kind of considered one big group of people that have grown up together and families that are very interconnected. And so, you know, you could definitely see the difference for the people receiving the money and not receiving the money. And that is why kind of these ultimately need to be universal programs. And I think it's still kind of to be seen how the people receiving the money and the whole market and economy in and of itself will be affected. Will it raise everybody else? Or, you know, will these tensions create kind of more lasting conflicts? And so that was, yeah, I feel as though that was sort of the biggest inequality that we saw kind of emerge as a result of some getting it and some not.
And maybe were you disappointed when this young man could not finish his studies in Nairobi?
Of course, yeah. I mean, it's very difficult to watch. I think the bottom line for us became that a basic income isn't a silver bullet, you know, as Larry Madowo says in the film. It's kind of one piece of the puzzle in many respects, and it certainly helped John kind of get this leg up and move to Nairobi and do something that he probably wouldn't have been able to do. But life is still difficult, and you know, how do we continue to support each other, and how do we continue for somebody like John to be able to stay on and finish his education? It's a really big, tough question, and we just felt as though that was something that we wanted to make clear in the film, that this is kind of, again, one piece of the puzzle, but that the conversation needs to be ongoing, and it's a tough thing to crack, to say the least.
Yeah, very true. While the film was starting, we saw most of the villagers talking of, you know, this is money from Illuminati. This money is not going to maybe do what it's supposed to be doing, and etc. So did we maybe have people who are eligible to get this money but literally refuse to take the money?
Maybe Teti can speak to that. I know of one couple in the village that did turn the money down because of some concerns. Yeah.
Sure.
I'm not sure if that changed, Teti.
No, that did not change. It's the same couple who declined to receive the money. Yeah, and they have also been covered in the film, if you remember, at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe what were the major concerns, and if at all this is to continue, do you think this is something that can be changed? Because if at all it's for 12 years, we are only in the 5th year, and they're probably seeing the changes within the other members. So I don't know.
So at the time when we were doing the enrollment, this specific family, as you can see in the film, what they told us is they felt comfortable that they did not need the money. And the response that they gave us, which we recorded, was that, you know, that money could help somebody else in their neighborhood. However, as you could see, the community members speaking, there might be a possibility that these are some of the people who were thinking that this money may have been, you know, money from Illuminati or some suspicious sources.
And were you also maybe providing support to be able to help these people from the community to make maybe plans together and etc. for the money in preparation for them receiving the money?
That's a really good question, Saraphina. A lot of people who talk about, you know, who ask questions about delivery of unconditional cash would always ask that question, but in different ways. And many times people believe that poor people do not have the capacity to make the decision for how to use money when they're given. That, if you ask me, is a very paternalistic attitude and very condescending to poor people. In any case, you can see that we did not come into this village to tell them what to do with the money, but they reorganized themselves and everybody came with a solution. And here they are talking about what each of them decided to do with the money. So I think it is a high time we give poor people the space to be able to make decisions about their lives and be able to, also decide and make choices for what's best for their lives. I think what we have seen in the aid sector is a lot of times we go into communities with pre-designed programs, defining what we think is the causes of poverty and the solutions that we have designed in boardrooms. Then what happens is recipients then end up do things that they know are not the most urgent in their lives, the most impactful. And we have seen projects that are abandoned because people think that those who are belonging to the donors or to the foreigners who brought it to their villages. When you give them the resources, give them the money in their hands, they take responsibility, they are accountable, and they will always monitor what they do with that money. And they will say, this is how far my money went. If you just come with your solutions, they will always come and expect you to come with more solutions.
Thank you. We only have, I think, one option for them receiving the money. That was through their mobile phones. And we've also seen, we had some elderly people throughout in the village. And so I'm not sure if at all you had challenges on how they're going to receive the money, or if at all they're going to have to buy their own mobile phones for them to be able to get the money.
When we run enrollment for these communities, we send officers to go to the communities to talk to them about the design of the program and how the transfers are delivered. All the recipients in our programs receive their transfers on their mobile wallets. And when we enter the communities, we distribute feature funds to everyone. We know very well that if you're going to be targeting communities of this level of poverty, illiteracy, and other vulnerabilities, including old age, is inevitable. But we don't want them to be left out just because they can't use funds. So what we do is we assign what we call helpers and trustees, people who they themselves have selected in the community and have appointed as helpers who will help direct them when they are using the transfers. If you went to these communities today, they will tell you that they prefer receiving the transfers on their mobile phones than they would if you give them to a bank. But that's because there are technicalities of receiving money in the banks as compared to the phones. Phones are private, it is easy, it reaches them in their hands, and there is community support when they receive the money in their phones, where the people within their families support them to receive the money, to transact, and to manage their transfers.
And how sure are you that now these people who are like their trustees are being able to give the money to the individuals who are supposed to get the money monthly?
As you have seen in the film, we have a team in our office that sits each and every day. And the work that they do is call all recipients that we send their transfers. And what we do is ask them their experience with the transfers, including whether they have received the money and the status of the receipt of the money. That is one. We also have another team that visits the communities physically to monitor any leakages or any adverse events that happen to these recipients. That way we are able to keep contact with the recipients and make sure that we understand their experiences with the transfers and mitigate if there's any risk. It would be wrong to say here that there is absolutely no challenge. Definitely, and that is the reason why we have the full-fledged call center and people going into the communities to support these vulnerable community members.
I can see a lot of people are so much concerned with Jael. Lauren, was Jael a real person or was she an actress? So to what extent is this a film, a documentary?
She's a very real person, and it was all happening in real time that we filmed her. So yeah, there was no performance element to her story whatsoever.
And I can reinforce that Jael was a real human being. I met her. She, lived in the village during the time of the transfer. But if you check when we were starting the program, you could see that when we visited her household, she was not there, and myself and another officer speaking to her mother were asking her mother that, where is this girl? We are not going to enroll her until we confirm that she's actually a part of this community and she's living here. I think Giles' story is one that would touch anybody's heart, and you could see that also in the film. There's lots of sympathy towards her. However, it's also an occurrence that has given us, as an organization, an opportunity to learn a lot about things that we can improve. And one of those is being better at communicating back to recipients. I think one of the biggest tensions with Giles' situation is because she was enrolled as an eligible underage, she had to wait for 3 years. So basically, her account was inactive until the time when now her age mates started receiving the money. So you could imagine that she's holding this expectation 3 years into the program, and it's only then that we realize that actually this girl, we should have told her early that she wasn't going to be eligible. The fact of the matter is, at the time when we were running the enrollment, Giles was not living in the village, and she was treated as an imposter, and therefore by the protocol of the program, she remains ineligible to receive transfers under this program.
One of the things that most people look at is how the program is going to sustain itself afterwards. So probably after the 12 years, how are you collaborating with the local communities or even the government to ensure that there's sustainability of the work that you're doing at the moment?
So this is a question that a lot of programs ask, and sustainability is a big question. However, number one, we want to appreciate the fact that this is a randomized controlled trial. So we are in the process of learning. These are some of the things that we are going to try and learn. What is it that we can learn out of this study as a universal basic income? When you give it for 12 years, what happens in terms of sustainability? When I look at the other projects that we have done, I can report here that we have run about 20 randomized controlled trials, which have been tested and followed up 3 years, 6 years. And we have seen for those projects where we are sending large transfers, we are seeing sustained impact 3 years later, 6 years later, and other studies that have been done by other organizations, not just GiveDirectly, and other programs, not just GiveDirectly's program, have sustained the same outcome that proves that cash transfers impact can be sustained years after the program has already been closed and ended. So community members basically are the ones who sustain the program and not somebody else, third party, coming into their communities to help, sustain the impact of the program in their lives.
Okay, thank you. Chio, I'm trying to look through the questions. I'm not sure if at all you can highlight some as well.
Sure, yeah. So perhaps we could tackle the last one, Saraphina, which is from Matt Bryan, which is another way to distribute money would be to give it to the village as a whole and then let them decide collectively how to spend it. Was this considered? And then perhaps we could go to close.
So basically at GiveDirectly, we have used previously different methodologies for distributing money. So some time back, we used what we call proxy mean test. And after assessing, the outcomes of a proxy mean test, we found out that there are better approaches than a proxy mean test, such as just giving money to everybody in a village. Other programs have tested the same, models that Mark has just suggested, which is community members by themselves being given the money and asked to distribute the money. The adverse events that come out of that are actually, debatable, and definitely we can explore that further. But we have seen that if you provide a promise to give a whole village money, give every household the money in equal measure, you're not only giving, an equal starting point and improving village cohesion, you're also giving them an easy time in terms of the decision for who receives and who doesn't receive. Because within a village, if it is a village that is living in poverty, it is very clear that everybody, all the households in that village will be living in extreme poverty. So why select who to give and who not to give, at the household? Just give everybody in that household the transfers. And that is what you can see within this project, where we are giving everybody in the village an amount of money that gives a foundational or a flow to help them start off their lives.
Okay, I think just before we close, there's a question here from Neil Howard. He's asking that what plans does GiveDirectly have for advocating for the government to adopt and also scale up UBI as well as global funding for UBI?
So the conversations around cash transfers in general is an ongoing conversation. And momentum has to be built not just by GiveDirectly, but also other partners and individuals who believe in this cause and see the impact in communities and in individuals. If I could talk about what we see today, governments have social protection programs where, transfers are sent to specific populations. For example, here in Kenya, we have cash transfers sent to old persons, people living with disability, orphans and vulnerable children. And if you could ask in terms of evidence, in terms of advocacy towards the government, it is, we can say that the evidence that we get out of this study should inform the conversations that can be held with the government as a build-up on the social protection programs to see whether the learnings from the social protection program, the learnings from the universal basic income study could be anything that could be instituted as a public policy in governments. At this point in time, I would say that the best that we can do is showcase what the projects have done anecdotally to the recipients. But in terms of influencing, we'd need to wait for concrete results from the randomized control trial to see the positivity and the level of impact before we can be able to, add it onto the advocacy discourse with governments.
And how many people are you targeting to have reached with this program that is after now the 12 years?
So as we'd said, this is an experiment. It was targeting 20,000 people, and these 20,000 people were divided into 3 cohorts. Of these 3 cohorts, 6,000 of these people are going to be receiving money for 12 years.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe any last comments from Lauren before we wind up? I'm seeing time is not really on our side, so probably you can just give us your last comments on this film. I'm sure we still have a lot of things to talk about now that this is just the 5th year and we still have like more than 5 years to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I would just end by thanking you all so much for watching the film and engaging so deeply with it. We are just kind of beginning to launch it. As I think it was mentioned, it will be released on Neflix Africa on September 1st, which we're very excited about. It's available for rental, I believe, in the UK, and we're kind of working on its expansion through Europe and figuring out US distribution as well. So please, do follow us. I think our Twitter was put into the chat at one point, but we are hoping to have more distribution updates soon, and hoping that you all will share it with your broader community. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Caroline, any last words?
Yeah, I would also say thank you very much to everyone who joined to view. We at GiveDirectly continue to, work together to see that people living in poverty get the support that they need. We continue to explore in terms of learnings for lessons that we can bring to the world for people to see what direct cash transfers can do to communities. Meanwhile, we continue to appreciate recipients in these rural villages who have been able to demonstrate to us that they can do better than we have always thought, and that we can actually trust them to be able to make choices and make decisions about their lives and tell the story of their own power to the world and to us all. So have a great evening.
Thank you very much, Caroline, and thank you very much, everyone, for joining in and listening, as well as sharing your concerns about the film. I'm sure for all those who are in Africa, you're able to get these on Netflix, and Johnny is also going to share a follow-up link on the same. So I'll just take this back to Johnny, and thank you very much, and have a nice evening, everyone.
Thank you so much, Saraphina. Yeah, once again, as has been said, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been absolutely fantastic. I could happily listen to the next hour of questions. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you to Caroline for all the amazing work that you and your team are doing on the ground. Thank you to Lauren for such a wonderful film. I'm already looking forward to the sequel, and hopefully Sam's youngest will be old enough for him to be able to join us for the Q&A next time. Thank you, Chiwe, for your support this evening and helping with answering all the questions and sharing. There has been, as said, links to follow both the kind of the film and the production company in the chat. Of course, Saraphina is one of the co-founders of UBI Lab Kenya. So if you would like to support them, do follow them. And if you want to get involved in the network, which is literally here to campaign for helping people find ways to get a basic income wherever you are for everyone. So we can work together, hopefully in doing that. Absolutely amazing Q&A session and answers to all the questions, and brilliant hosting by Saraphina. Thank you so much, everyone, this evening. Please do help us share the video and help get the word out there. And we will endeavour to find other documentaries and films so that we can all share from the learning of all the experiments that are currently happening across the world. But yeah, we will draw it to a close there. Do keep in touch. Do support in any way that you can. We will see you all again soon. Thank you so much.